Before we get into Simpro itself and have a look in the software at customer and site relationship, I thought it would be useful to introduce customer insights to you using this presentation. So the first thing to note is that sites can have multiple customers associated to them. And you will have seen this in the software anyway if you've been using it for any period of time, or if you've had a look at a site record. Quite often sites might have multiple customers associated to them. And that's important because it means that we can have a single site and we can go and do work at that single site for different customers and send invoices over to the different customers who have requested that work. But in terms of the site history and audit trail, we can have that all in one place regardless of client. Customers can have multiple sites associated to them, which is really important, because if you have a single customer and they have multiple properties that they own or maintain, it means that you can store them all in one place and you can go and do work at each of the individual places. I'd also like to give you a really quick example of a customer that has a block of apartments with flats in it. In this example, the customer could either have two types of setup, depending on their requirements and depending on how you want to manage it. If the customer requests you to look after a block of apartments, and let's say, for example, they want you to look after the gates and barriers that are providing access to that block of apartments, and your contract is just to maintain them, well, it would make sense in that instance to have just one site that was applicable for the gates and barriers, because the gates and barriers cover just the block of apartments and a single site is fine, right? However, if the customer wants you to maintain all of the fire alarm devices in each individual flat throughout that building, then you may well need 40 sites in Simpro to cover the 40 flats. And the only thing that would change then in each site would be the very first part of the address, the flat number, the tenant that lives at that property, and perhaps the specific instructions which can be stored in public and private notes for each property. Now let's get into Simpro and have a look at a specific example so that you can learn even more about customer and site relationships.